Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today it is finally time for us to review Pokémon Sword and Shield on the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by me, so I'm the one responsible for all this, oh dear. Few tiny little things to cover before we get into the review proper. Number one being that I was privy to the Shield version of the game. Number two, we are extremely limited with what we can show you and how much, so there will be some repeated footage. And number three, this is entirely spoiler-free. We've been good boys and girls about this. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. If there's one thing everyone knows about Pokémon Sword and Shield is that they've been talked about. They've been talked about a lot. Whether it's the controversy surrounding the emission of individual Pokémon, or a tree that looks a little bit too low res for people's tastes, chatter about these games has been incessant since their announcement. Fans are undeniably divided in a manner that will probably fall into history extremely quickly, but what it all comes down to are these two games. Are they good? Are they bad? Do they have both good and bad points? Because nothing is inherently perfect or inherently worthless. Spoiler alert, it's the latter one, but let's talk about why. Starting off in Pokémon Sword and Shield is about as Pokémon as it gets. You're a youngish child who's been tasked with going off on an adventure of a lifetime surrounded by small creatures that do your bidding because that's what they've been programmed to do. It's nothing you've not seen before if you've played a Pokémon game previously. This time, however, you're in the largely idyllic Galar region, which is inspired directly by the United Kingdom, complete with the green and pleasant lands that undeniably remind us of our dear old Blighty. You meet up with the first of your several rivals, Hop, and you get yourself a Pokémon from his philanthropic brother Leon, who also just so happens to be this region's champion. There's a lot of classic hallmarks here, but it's sprinkled with a few interesting, if potentially largely inconsequential, differences, such as the Pokémon that neither you nor Hop picks at the start being taken by the champion rather than being sent to the processing plant to make more candy in Pokémon Go. This last chicken in the shop also happens to be the monster that's super effective against your own choice, which instinctively filled us with a sense of dread and anticipation thinking about when we'd have to face up against them. What's also new in Sword and Shield is the hands-off approach to tutorials. This game does offer to explain things to you through dialogue options, but if you tell the game you're already hard enough to tackle the swathes of level 2 monsters living just outside your house without any guidance, it'll let you be on your way. Considering how massive and wide-spanning the franchise is, this is a very welcome breath of fresh air for series veterans, and certainly seems to streamline the introductory part of the game. After a bit of chatter, a few new characters, and a bit of wandering through tall grass, you're finally let loose on the big selling point of the whole thing, the wild area. This is an expanse of grassland, water, and other bits and bobs that house myriad different Pokémon and a controllable camera! It's kind of silly just how much we appreciated this feature, and highlighted to us just how far behind Pokémon was in certain specific regards in comparison to other modern game series. This is something that we were sadly reminded of every so often, but we'll get into that in more detail later. At first glance, we were totally enamored with Pokémon Sword and Shield's much-hyped new wild area. It's big, it's full of Pokémon, ooh, there's things we can't reach yet! We were filled with a sense of joy and wonder, the likes of which we've not felt in a Pokemon game for a very long time. This is really new, and seeing all the countless varieties of Pokemon actually rustling around in the tall grass in front of our eyes, just like in those Pokemon Let's Go games, makes it feel like we're in a world that's alive and rich with character. Our task was simply to get to the other side of the wild area and enter the next town, which we did. A little too quickly for our liking. After taking a good look at the map, we realized that the wild area was just one area of the map, and as soon as we left it, we were once again greeted with the same rigid roots and grassy patches, with the same wandering Pokemon, thankfully, that had been the series staple for so long. After returning to the wild area, we discovered that it does in fact stretch about twice, if not maybe a bit more, as far as we initially thought, which was a huge relief, but when playing through the rest of the story, we kept returning to the wild wild area, even though we really didn't need to, just because it's where we wanted to be. It's where we wanted the whole game to be. Hideously powerful Pokemon such as a level 50 Steelix were all just there, completely beyond our skill level, but perfectly accessible, teasing us with an unimaginable XP boost if only we could fill it. It's exciting, endearing, and tantalizing to see such overpowered monsters out in the open. We just wish it could have been a bit more of an integral part of the experience. Not that we could catch these powerful monsters even if we wanted to, because with so many strong Pokemon accessible so early, things had to be changed to make sure that you weren't able to blitz through things too quickly, and it's all thanks to gyms. The gyms are back and bigger than ever. In the good old days, gym battles were humble affairs between you and a trainer who had somehow convinced everyone else that they're ultra powerful despite having only 3 Pokemon all under level 30. Now these contests are preceded by challenges which can be fairly simple and traditional, or completely bonkers such as herding Wooloo whilst avoiding ferocious Yamper. These are generally pretty damn enjoyable, save for one that is an absolute stinker in our eyes, but we'll let you find out which one. But the real spectacle is once you've done all the nonsense and you're ready to take on the gym leader proper. Stepping into the massive arena is something we didn't really appreciate when seen in trailers and the like, but doing it for real, it really was a gripping experience. One that we thought would dull as we nailed leader after leader, but instead the stakes became ever higher, and hearing the crowds chant and cheer really gives some gravity to the situation. Beat them and you'll be able to catch higher level Pokemon than you could before. Sneaky. Then there's Dynomaxing, the new gimmick slapped all over the promotional stuff, where your Pokemon gets ludicrously big for a few turns, and that seemed to be about it. In truth, we weren't really bowled over by the idea, as it seemed nothing more than a rather unsubtle means of getting fans excited about ballooned Mon. Colorus not only surprised but tickled pink then when we started using it in gyms, because you can't use it in normal encounters, only very specific ones, and actually ended up having a really good time with it. It's a mechanic that's not going to set the world on fire by any means, and realistically, we can't see it becoming a staple of the series for years to come, but for what it is, it's really good fun. It's likely due to the atmosphere, crowds of people going absolutely ballistic when it happens, and the fact that you can't do it most of the time, but for our money as a little addition, it does the job better than we'd hoped. It does add a small amount of tactical variation as well. When you Dynamax a Pokemon, all the moves they had before keep their typing, but lose all additional effects such as poisoning and lowering stats, meaning your Dynamax Pokemon becomes nothing more than an all-out powerhouse, which isn't always what you want, so some consideration is needed. The only exception to this is a move called Max Guard, which is basically Protect for big boys and girls, and has the same chance of failing if used repeatedly. As we said before, it's not revolutionary, but for what it is, Dynomax is a lot more fun than we expected. What goes on between the gym battles, though, that's more of a mixed bag. The routes we mentioned before that have been a part of the series since the beginning are a little bit more vertical and windy than we're used to, but apart from that, there's almost nothing really to write home about in this respect. They're fine, but that's all they are. What's more, you'll be hounded by NPCs during the story that want to talk to you for a few moments, walk on ahead a few meters, and then want to talk to you again, mixing up the pace in a way that we really didn't appreciate. Too many times we were so close to just mashing through the text that if we hadn't had the job of reviewing the game, we probably would have. To make things worse, all this discourse is extremely basic and mostly uninteresting. Characters just bob their heads and flap their mouths repeatedly, or pivot on the spot by using a walking animation. It's all stuff that would have been fine on something as limited as the 3DS, but we're talking about a console that is significantly more capable than that, and as a result, certain things in the game feel really quite out of place and rigid, especially when compared to other games on the Switch. There are a handful of fully animated cutscenes that by contrast look really bloody good, but a solid 90% of the time it's just the same old chattering we explained prior, and that's a real shame. Given the leap up to more powerful hardware, we really had high hopes that Game Freak could take the series to a new level in this regard. What else is there? Well, you can access your Pokemon boxes anytime you like when you're not in a battle or a gym, which is hugely appreciated. You can also make a Pokemon remember a move, forget a move, or just change its name in any Pokemon Center in Galar, rather than flying to someone's specific house or on a specific route. It's also free, meaning you're much more able to mix things up and try out new ideas without fear of messing things up. These are small changes, but extremely welcome ones. You can also make use of your Pokeball Plus if you have one, slapping in any one of your many Pokemon in it to carry it around the real world for a bit, and earn some in-game items at the same time. It's not much, but considering the accessory's rather hefty price tag, it's nice to see that it's still compatible in these newer titles. You can also set up camp with your party at any time, besides in battles and in gyms just like with the boxes. You can play with your Pokemon, talk at them, and most importantly, cook curry with them. Yes, by tossing a handful of berries and potentially even a special ingredient into a pot of endless sauce, you can cook up one of a colossal number of curries to feed yourself and your Pokemon. If you're good at it, you can not only heal your party and make them like you even more, but also grant them experience points and restore PP. It's a little bit like having a portable Pokemon Center with you at all times, which is especially helpful out in the wild area. It takes time, but due to the practically endless possible combinations at your disposal, it's actually pretty damn rewarding. There's also the inevitable slew of new Pokemon and moves as well. We're not going to name any names to keep things spoiler-free, but overall, the new selection of Pokemon is really solid. There are one or two less interesting examples, but the vast majority are pretty chuffing lovely in our eyes. What makes them even more interesting is the fact that they were kept a secret in all the pre-release info. Yeah, we knew about certain ones, of course, and the leaks didn't help, but there's little better in life than finding a Pokemon that you've literally never seen before, learning its ins and outs and waiting to see if it evolves, and into what. We can't express how much more enjoyable this made finding Galar's new creatures. Alright, it's about time we address the Don fan in the room, the lack of a national Pokedex in Pokémon Sword and Shield. Yes, it's true that not every Pokemon available in previous games will be present in Galar, or even usable in the game, and if recent interviews are anything to go by, they never will be. Considering the fact that every game prior has at least been able to house all previous generations, even if they're not actually present in the game and require external services, this is a big blow and in our eyes couldn't have come at a worse time. The Pokemon series is finally being pushed onto the big screen with its core games running on the most powerful hardware it's ever had access to, and yet we lose a whole chunk of the roster in the process. It's a sad state of affairs, we're not gonna lie. And then there's the other small issue, and that's graphics and performance. This is actually quite difficult to pin down, as there are certain instances where Pokemon Sword and Shield looks and runs great, no denying it. This is usually in battles where the highly detailed Pokemon models pop out of the screen at what our eyes estimate to be a cracking 1080p and a very solid 30 frames a second for the most part. Camping is also a particular highlight, with your Partymon running up to you in all their high tri-count glory, with a shallow depth of field producing a very pleasing bokeh effect behind them. It's moments like these that remind you that yes, this is a proper mainline Pokemon game running on your Switch, and it's glorious. Disappointingly, there are just as many moments when things look, not wishing to put too fine a point on it, really quite underwhelming. The wild area, for all its mechanical prowess and deliciousness, can look pretty plain and basic for a Switch game, and there are even moments of noticeable frame drops around here as well. As we mentioned previously, most dialogue sequences are stiffly animated, and many towns are woefully underpopulated and barren. What's even worse is these underpopulated town centers are also prone to similar frame drops as the wild area for some bizarre reason. It's nothing that really impacts the overall experience, and many people likely won't care at all, but for us, it's a little bit disappointing given the Switch's potential. What's far from disappointing, however, is the game's soundtrack. Sweet goggly goodness, this is a spicy set of jingles we have right here. Everything from the town themes to the piercing bagpipes heard in the wild area is absolutely tip-top, but the real cream of the crop is the gym battles. Once again, the care and attention put into these iconic battles is heightened even further by a thumping, bass-heavy string of tunes that add real feeling into every moment. Combine this with the crowds joining in arms style as the leader's final Pokemon takes its stand, and you've got a recipe for a serious adrenaline rush. And do you remember Dynomaxing, that thing we mentioned earlier and said could only really happen in gym battles? Well, we lied! You can also take on Gigantomon in max raid battles, which pits you and 3 other trainers from the real world, or the made-up world, against a Pokemon that would be too big to fit on a 3DS. These are quite different from normal battles and can be tricky to complete within the limited time frame. This is mainly because not only are these Pokemon hench, but they can also erect shields to protect themselves and attack multiple times in a turn. They hit so hard that they can often body any one of your team in a single hit, which means your only option is to hit back just as hard. Thankfully, you can do that by Dynomaxing your Pokemon as well. Only one person can do so, and only once, and and with the same 3-turn limit that your opponent is not restricted by, so it doesn't exactly make it a cakewalk. If you manage to defeat it, you can catch it, and considering that these are often rare or even exclusive to max raid battles, it's well worth your time taking them on. Max raids prove to be a fun little challenge and give the game a social element, much like that seen in Pokémon Go. Pokémon Sword and Shield succeed in bringing some new ideas to the table, but they're also somewhat guilty of not pushing things far enough. What's done right is done really bloody right, but what's done wrong feels like it's come from a decade-old design document. There are moments contained within that are the best the series has ever been, but this joy is at times spoiled by contrasting moments that left us feel disappointed and did not match up to what the rest of these games can offer. What we've got here is an experience full of dizzying highs and slightly irritating lows, from the unadulterated wonder of seeing a brand new Pokémon in a stadium full of cheering crowds, to the monotonous and dragged out dialogue that we just wanted to skip. The wonders of exploring the wild area feels like the true evolution of the series, but even this brave stride forward is balanced out by the inclusion of restrictive and boring routes from games of old. These niggling issues are impossible to ignore then, but on the whole, Pokémon Sword and Shield are a solid start to the HD generation of Pokémon games, but there's ample room for improvement in the next outing. Well, hello, you've joined me at the end. Yes, this is where I'd usually give my personal thoughts, but as I wrote the review, my personal thoughts are all in the review, unsurprisingly. Instead, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the schism and the divide that this has caused within the Pokémon fanbase. If I've upset you with this review, please do not take it personally. It is just one opinion in a sea of opinions. It does not invalidate your opinion, and it's not necessarily better than your opinion. It is just one opinion. We encourage people to discuss the games in the comments, but please do respect the opinions of others. And most importantly, be lovely people.